Okay, so you're waking up in the middle of the night, your heart's pounding out of your chest, you can barely breathe, and that dream seems so real. My name is Sam Spataro. Welcome to my channel and the third episode of Anxiety Tips, where I teach you how to turn the villain in us all that anxiety causes, and teaching you how to recreate beliefs around it, to get control of it and turn it into a superpower to fuel you to more freedom, happiness, joy, wealth, prosperity, whatever it is that you would like to become more of on a daily basis that you aren't already today. All right, so the anxiety tip for today is anxiety and sleep. And a few years ago, well, maybe more than a few years, let's go back 5 years, when my anxiety was at the highest, I can remember waking up in the middle of nights in complete panic because of the dreams that I would be having. They'd feel so intense and real that I'd wake up in like the greatest amount of sweat, my heart pounding out of my chest. I was scared shitless. And this went on over and over and over again for years. And it could be about many different things. At the time, mostly it was about my businesses, about my best friend that just died, and thinking about, death and when my time would be and what would I be leaving behind, what would happen to my kids, my wife, what would that look like? And there was a multitude of things that even were just not realistic. But here's what happens. So when you are really in tune with your anxiety, you are more than likely to wake up through a lot of restless nights because you're so, I'm not even quite sure what the word is, but you're so connected to everything that you're thinking and feeling that you're already oversensitized as it is when you're awake, that when you sleep in your unconscious mind, it still seems so real. And so it feels a lot more real to you than the average person. And I could remember waking up at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, sometimes 5 o'clock in the exact same night in complete panic and being exhausted and drained the next day where I couldn't function. I would be fatigued all the time. Depression also follows too with that because you need sleep to function and be healthy. A minimum of 6 to 8 hours of an undisturbed sleep. But when you're at the height and the peak of anxiety, it's virtually impossible to go 3 to 4 hours without being interrupted from being too sensitized to thinking. And so, why does this happen? I think that's kind of where we need to start. Well, we need to get very clear on this. What's different between our brains and animal brains? Animal brains only fear things that are real threats. Human brains, on the other hand, are completely different. You and I can go to sleep and think of some far-gone fantasy that could never become a reality. But because our brain doesn't have the capacity to see the difference between something we vividly imagine and something that's real, we always react the same. Now, if you're conscious and awake and you're up during the day and you might have a crazy thought, well, maybe you won't be as sensitive to it. But in your sleep, it's a little bit different. Your body's different, your mind's operating a little bit differently, and you become a lot more sensitized, and you don't really have the capacity to really, get clear on whether it's going to be real or not. So your brain is just doing what it knows best, and it's there to protect you, and it triggers that fight or flight response, your fellow friend anxiety, to protect you and run like hell away from the danger. And so that's the why. That's why you're waking up in the middle of the night. There's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you have insomnia. Maybe you're waking up in the middle of the night being too sensitive to thoughts or dreams, or maybe you're thinking you're going crazy because these things never bothered you before, or maybe it's always been something you've dealt with. Well, there's your why. I knew for me, once I really understood the facts about why this was happening to me, I was able to separate myself between that which I was experiencing and to the reality of what it really meant. And so the very first tip that I want to give you is you need to separate yourself from what you're dreaming about at night and what is actually reality. And so once you're able to do that, when you go to sleep tonight or the next night, whenever it is you might have anxiety next, I want you to be able to take a step back when you wake up, take a deep breath in, and just tell yourself with a smile, all right, this was just an imagined, crazy fantasy thought. Maybe you wanted it to come true, maybe not, that really just got my body really excited. And then it's your job to communicate to that protective side of you, maybe come up with a unique name with it, and calm it down, reassure it that everything is well, and coach yourself back to sleep. Well, I know what you're thinking. That's easy for you to say. It's not so easy for me. Well, here's a couple other things that are going to follow with number one, the first tip of identifying what the difference is between what's happening between what you vividly fantasize about and what is actually reality. The second thing that you can do is write it down. My kids come into my room all the time from nightmares. And what I always tell them is this when they come in, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. You had a crazy, wild dream. Notice how he didn't say nightmare. Use positive words attached to that which you are thinking about. And then I go to say, do you know how many people are millionaires today from having those exact same dreams, those exact same thoughts? And because they didn't fear them, they wrote them down and turned them into scripts. They're now famous movies that people all across the world enjoy, and you get to enjoy dressing up like in Halloween. How cool is that? So that's the second tip, to turn the switch off, is now have fun with that which you have feared in your sleep. You see, nervous energy is both fearful and also excitement. So you neutralize it by creating a different belief and giving it a different meaning to what it actually is. And so the third thing that I want you to do, if maybe that isn't working, is write it down. Get a piece of paper, write it down. Write down also not only that, hey, you know what, this is a cool, crazy thought. I'm going to jot it down. Maybe I can get to it tomorrow. But just write about everything and anything that's on your mind. Get it out of your mind onto the paper. And literally, it'll feel like a load comes off your shoulders, because when you experience that, you wake up, you're tensed up. Your body's nervous, it's ready for fight or flight, and you're tensed up, your breathing's different. It'll help to alleviate some pressure and take a little bit of the load off. Here is the next tip that I'm going to end with, and this works for me almost every single time. The very next thing that I do is I place both of my hands on my heart and I focus on deep breathing and things that I'm grateful for. Now, here's where I struggled along the way, and sometimes I still do. When I put my hands on my heart and I try to focus on things that I'm grateful for, sometimes it's hard to do. I can't even think of the simplest thing, but I choose to do it anyway. I choose to at least say the things that I'm grateful for. And after 2 to 5 minutes, what will happen is your nervous system will calm down and you'll recalibrate. And what do I mean by that? Your heart and your mind will go in sync and in harmony. Because when you're in the midst of anxiety and waking up from a crazy dream, your heart and your mind are going in opposite spectrums, which shows on an EEG scan when you're having an anxiety attack or some form of anxiety that you're not in equilibrium and you're not at a state of flow. So to get yourself back to state, what you need to do is you got to get those hands on your heart. You got to get your mind calibrated to think of things you're grateful for, because you can't be fearful at the same time as you are being grateful. And after 2 to 5 minutes, you will calm down. Now I know what you're going to ask next. What happens if it happens again? I was already going to cover that because it happened to me many times. You just keep repeating that process, because they say it takes 21 days to develop a new habit. You can't just expect to do it once and it to work. You're going to have to do it over and over and over again until it becomes your natural response. It's like a light switch. When you flick on a light switch, you know that either the light is going to go on or off. And the same thing will happen the next time you have this experience at night. At one point, you will flick the switch on, and that will be your automatic response from 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the tips that I gave you and how to cure your anxiety when you sleep. And so I'm going to end on that. If you enjoyed this video, my third video with anxiety tips, with anxiety and sleep, and how you can become your own hero with the tips and the strategies that I just gave you, give me a big thumbs up. If you're new to this community, I'd love to give you a warm welcome by hitting that subscribe button And hit the notification bell. The next time I do a video, you'll be notified and you'll be able to watch it right away. And if you could please do me a huge favor. One of my goals in my life, my mission, is to become the biggest mental health advocate in the world for children, for adults, for anyone who is suffering, because I know what it was like to feel helpless and like nothing would work, and to think that I would be on pills for the rest of my life, not being free from anxiety, but rather that when I would have it, I had something to suppress it, to numb it, to bring it back down, but it would never solve the underlying problems. And so if you need a little bit more help, in my comments section below, I will link my coaching platform where I create for you a personalized 21-day anxiety program where I guarantee at least a 50 to 75% improvement on a daily basis. And if that doesn't happen, I give you your money back. And I want to end on that. If you are going to dream today, guys, like I tell my kids, and I end every single video, and I always will, make sure you dream big and always remember to keep smiling.